Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's AGP webinar, Improving the Way We Bring About Change. Most of you know I'm Lisa from the AGP office, just here to help Alan to facilitate this webinar. I'll hand you over to him in a moment, but just before we do, can I just get you all to mute your microphones, please, just during the presentation, just to avoid any interference or background noise. There will be a question and answer session later on. Obviously, you can come off your microphones then to ask any questions or make any comments that you want to. If you prefer, you can ask the questions on the chat facility, and then Alan will try to answer as many of these as possible at the end. If you need any support during the webinar, I'll be monitoring the chat, so if you have any problems, please just ask. We are being recorded just to help us collate any questions or comments which may be missed. If anyone has any questions or concerns about this, please do let us know. As always, following the webinar, you will receive 2 emails from me. We do require you to sign a digital registration form for the Welsh Government, and you'll receive this through an email from HelloSign with a link. It takes less than a minute and very easy to follow. Just allows us to confirm to Welsh Government that the webinar took place and how many people attended. So it is really important that we get these back. You'll also receive an email with a link to 2 surveys to provide feedback to us. So please, can you complete these and send them back? And on that note, I'm going to hand you over to Alan. So, Jesse took his sip of water.
Yes, I took my drink of water. Good timing.
Off you go.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Just a slight word of warning. I'm not used to this webinar concept, so talking for 45 minutes is not something I normally do. I'm used to running sort of workshops, facilitation type workshops, where you get lots of people involved and we get discussions and so on. So this is quite different. So please bear with me, and I'll try and make it obviously as interesting as possible. So, what happened then? Hang on. That was a good start. The screen has disappeared.
Yeah, we've got it.
Have you got this? I haven't got it, so I don't know what happened there. 2 seconds.
Yeah, so we've got it in front of us.
Technical. Hang on, sorry. Right, here we are.
All right.
So, who I am, I worked in the manufacturing industry originally. I worked as a tool maker, an apprentice. I did some graduate development stuff, and then I moved on through my career, worked for the training board for a couple of years, then moved into various management roles, mainly, again, in the manufacturing industry. And one of the roles I took up was in a group called PIGS Group. And the reason I'm telling you that is because PIGS Group was one of the most interesting jobs I ever had. And PIGS stood for Performance Improvement Group. And that's where I learned quite a lot about change and how to initiate and sustain change in organizations. I set up my business in 1998, excuse me, Blue Sky Business Solutions, and throughout the past 20 years, I've done a PhD with the Open University, which was very hard work, but my sort of focus for the PhD was around sustainable improvement, which is what I want to share with you today. Some of the stuff I learned and some of the stuff I'm still learning, to be honest. What I do, I work with organizations, with individuals, sometimes on a one-to-one basis, sometimes with large companies. Used to do a lot of work with Bosch, work with the Royal Mint, etc. And I work on things like strategy development, but I try to introduce strategy that works, not strategy that's put in the cupboard. I do a lot of lean stuff, lean systems thinking, and that's what I learned again about change failing. I can give you quite a few examples of that. I do one-to-one coaching with people and sort of development, leadership development workshops as and when sort of required. So what we're going to talk about today is change. And, you know, some people love change, some people don't like change quite so much. But we're going to talk about change and how we can ensure to a certain degree that when we introduce change and work on making things better, hopefully, that we can make it stick and enable it to become part of the organization rather than something that you've tried and that that fails, and a few months later you're trying to introduce something else. This concept of going around the wheel of change for the sake of it doesn't always work. So we can sort of talk about that later. I believe you're going to ask me some questions later, which would be good, and I'll do my best, obviously, to answer them. So, 45 minutes, questions at the end, okay. So basically, the concept of the presentation will be about what is change, why bother to change, the challenge of change, and then look at perhaps a different approach to change, and then some final thoughts at the end and a discussion, obviously. The other thing, I'd like you to guess what our mountain is. So if you can have a look at the mountain on the bottom right, at the end, I'll question you to see if you can work out which mountain is actually in the photograph. It's a very nice mountain. And in lockdown times, it's very tempting. So moving on to talk about change, we talk about two perhaps elements of change. We talk about this concept of incremental change or continuous improvement, which is about small incremental changes to products, services, products, or people, or whatever. But over a long period of time, these small changes can amass to quite a big change. So if you think of the Japanese with the sort of main introducers of incremental change, so the concept of Kaizen and so on, where they had a culture where change was almost a natural thing to do, and small changes amassed to major changes over a long period of time. And the second element is what we call radical change, or innovation, or what we call step change. And you're looking for the big groundbreaking ideas or technological advances. So for example, if you think of a 3D printer, that was almost like a technological breakthrough. It became something new, something different, and then became a marketable item. So the 3D printer was an innovation, but now people are improving the 3D printer. The 3D printer, the price of it is going down, and the capabilities of the printer are becoming more and more effective. So that's continuous improvement. So we got an example there of innovation, 3D printer, continuous improvement, the actual improvements of the printer. Okay, so when we talk about change, we've got to be careful as well, because people want to change sometimes for change's sake. And, you know, there's a message on the bottom there, and I've found this throughout my career: all improvement is change, but not all change is improvement. So you have to be careful that you're not just doing it because you really need to do it, and there is no improvement. So let's look at a couple of examples of why do we need change and why bother to change. So here's a couple of things that you may be aware of. The British motorcycle industry was the world leader in the 60s and 70s, and they failed to see the threat from the Japanese. The Japanese brought in small, clean machines that didn't break down. The British guys sat in their offices saying, we don't need them, they're not going to come, they're not going to take over. People like our machines breaking down, they like repairing them. They wiped them out in about 5 years. The British motorcycle industry was almost extinguished. It still ticks along, but there's not much left of it. The British car industry was wiped out. We still make vehicles now, but we're making them for people like Audi, BMW, etc. Why? Because we didn't match the quality, the delivery, etc. that the Germans and the Japanese brought in. Accountants think that they're immune to this, but I was talking to one accountant recently who sends his accounts off to India, and they send them back within 3 days, all done, perfectly done. So change is going to hit all of us, even in the upholstery industry, where they thought they were immune because the size of a settee or three-piece suite made it impractical to sort of import from other countries because of its size. And then the Chinese found a way of stacking these three-piece suites together and shipping them in an economically viable way. And now we can import three-piece suites from China. So that's become also a problem or an opportunity to improve. So why bother to change? Anybody recognize any of those organizations? Some of which are still ticking along. Tower Records, some of the older guys here may remember buying records there. You may remember the Blackberries and Nokia's. Nokia's still about. Orders have disappeared. Blockbuster disappeared. Clinton cards have disappeared. What about your company? Do you want to be on that list? Hopefully not. But if we stick our heads in the sand and don't do anything, we will be on that list. And it's about not just being the strongest organization, but you have to be light on your feet as well. You have to be proactive to change. You have to be able to take things on board and utilize your strengths and resources to move things forward, maybe in a different way. So change is essential for all organizations, but what sort of change? And that's the thing. And how do we incorporate change? So we look at, do you see change as a challenge? Do you see change as, oh my God, we've got to do something different. We've always done it this way. Why do we have to do this? Are you a glass full or a glass half full or glass half empty mentality? So is it a challenge or an opportunity? And the way you see things and the way your outlook is on your own organization will affect the way you introduce or actually try to move change along. Is it a challenge? So let's give you some examples of people who thought change was a challenge or didn't even see it. And that's the interesting bit. These are true. They're quite funny, some of these actually. I think there's a world market for 5 computers. So that organization isn't going to start looking at manufacturing computers. There's no market. There's only 5 in the world. Interestingly, that was Thomas Watson, chairman of IBM. One of the biggest companies in the world, still quite big actually, but we're one of the biggest. 5 computers. We don't like this sound, and guitar music is on the way out. Decca Recording Company rejected the Beatles in 1962. Bit of a problem, however. Thomas Edison, who invented the telephone and also had quite a number of manufacturing companies, so great opportunity for him to change his organization to make telephones. However, his belief and his vision was, I believe, that eventually every city will have one. I think it would be possibly nicer with all these mobile phones going around that it was reduced to every city. But these are real beliefs what people had. So there is no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home. And this was president of DEC, who are again, they're a huge manufacturing company back in the 80s, 90s, and so on. So the challenge of change, the first thing is, sometimes we just don't see it. We just don't see the opportunities because we got our head in the sand and we're too busy doing. We're too busy doing, we're too busy working, we're too busy looking at what we're doing at the moment without projecting forward into the future or seeing the opportunities that are out there. But we know all this. Everyone knows this, so it's nothing new. So I'm just sort of repeating stuff that everyone knows. But what I found is that the people who do recognize some of this stuff, why is it that so many attempts to introduce improvement or improvement initiatives, they start with a flourish, with this enthusiasm and so on. Some of them do, some of them don't, by the way, but some start with a flourish and then they just fade out and die. And I found this through my research. I did research on automotive companies and found that they were, some had attempted as many as 10 to 15 different improvement initiatives, and probably about one was still moving forward, if that. But they had, it was just crazy, to be honest. And of course, the second thing is the ones that do sometimes continue don't realize the benefits that were anticipated. They don't actually achieve what we thought they would achieve, mainly because of a number of reasons. And that's what I say here. So why? If we know all this, we know that things are difficult to do. We know they don't realize the benefits. We know what to do to introduce change, we think, yet they still don't work out. Why? So started to think about people. And we thought about, why do people resist change? And then I thought, do people resist change? And then I discovered, what's happened here? Yeah, people don't resist change. You can see that bit on the bottom. They resist being changed. I don't know what happened. There you are. People don't resist change, they resist being changed. And I discovered this not through any research or through any clever sort of interactions with organizations and so on. It was about when I was working in my role in a company called Northern Telecom, Nortel. And my job was to introduce change. And I couldn't understand why I come up with all these ideas with other people, and when we go to implement them and make them work, people just didn't want to do it, even though it made their jobs easier. So I discovered a way of a packaging solution for operators, and I introduced this, and a week later, I went, how's it going? I was just packaging, which was making their job much easier. They'd stopped doing it. And I thought, I don't get this. So what I did in that example, and I come on to the reason why I'm telling you this, I grabbed a couple of operators and took them up to the supplier of the packaging, which was in Scunthorpe, I think. We went out for the day. They met operators, talked to operators, explained what they were doing, etc. So they become part of the change. And when they came back, they were really the people who pushed it forward. So the change had to come from them and appeared to come from them rather than from me. It's obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me at the time. So let me just recognize that people are not just a commodity. They are humans who think and resist and sometimes go along with, etc. But you have to deal with them. So let me give you a quick exercise in change. I want you to do something for me. So if you watch me a minute, if you can all just fold your arms. You won't fold your arms without dropping your phones. Fold your arms. Now unfold them. Now fold them again the other way. So if you fold them left over right, fold it right over left. The other way. How does that feel? Probably a bit uncomfortable. So if you unfold your arms, and I say, without thinking, just fold your arms, 90% of people will fold them again the way they normally fold them. Because the change is uncomfortable. And we have to recognize that in order to get people to fold their arms the other way, you've got to help them to work through that change. So the discomfort of change is something that we need to understand and something we need to obviously recognize and take action with. So why do people resist change? So that I sort of thought, perhaps there's good reasons for this. So let's have a look at some of the reasons. Firstly, the security is threatened. You may think their security will be threatened if they don't change, because the business might disappear. But they only see it from their perception. Their security is threatened. I worked with a company who wanted to, they had a small manufacturing area with 20 people working in it. They wanted to reduce it to 10 people using lean stuff and so on. And I said, well, have you spoken to the people? Because they're going to be really switched on and motivated to do this if they know they're going to lose their job. No, they hadn't spoken to the people. But then when they did speak to them, they explained that they wouldn't lose their job. They would be moved to a different area. So that became a bit more acceptable. But people will resist. They're not going to accept change or encourage change if it's going to affect them. What's in it for me thing? The change threatens a sense of competence. I'm good at this. Now they're going to move me to something else. So, and I'm not so good at it. So I'm a bit worried. Fear of failure. Some people are afraid they'll fail, they've got no confidence. And some people are afraid of success. Because if I succeed at this, they may move me somewhere else. People can be quite challenging at times. They're comfortable where they are. I like where I am, I like what I'm doing, I'm okay with what I'm doing. So why are we changing? What's in it for me? They don't know what to change to. If anyone ever reads any stuff by a guy called Goldratt, Ellie Goldratt wrote a book many years ago called The Goal, which is a bestseller, well worth reading, easy book to read. The thing he talks about is, the first thing about change is to what to change to. What are you going to change to? And you have to be clear and concise about that. And the final thing for them, what's in it for me? Why should I bother? Why should I go along with this? There's nothing in it for me. I'm doing my job. I'm getting paid. Why do I need to do anything different? Okay, so from that sort of thinking, organizations also resist change for different reasons. I started to think about this. What the hell is going on? Organizations resist change for different reasons, yet, hang on, I'm pressing my button. Yeah. Yet, the same change process is used for every organization. And by that, I mean people will use a model and they will use it in the same way. For example, Kotta, everyone follows Kotta, or the Burning Platform, or Kurt Lewin, whatever. But the model is applied in a similar way. Yet, there was something missing. And I thought, what the hell is missing and what can we do about it? So, we need to understand what this difference is. We need to understand why organizations are different and why organizations have a difference. And this difference to me became one of the fundamentals. And this is what I did for my PhD research, was to look into what I call sustainable improvement. How would you introduce improvements that stick rather than we tried that, didn't work, tried that, didn't work, and things that, so they don't get the benefits that they anticipate, as we said earlier. So, moved on to talk about then, how do we actually look at the organization? Because the organizations are different. So, first thing we had to understand, and this is the thing that became a completely different starting point, was that organizations have a different culture. And we have to start by understanding the culture of the organization. Excuse me. And we start from there. We start with the culture and start with understanding the culture. And change has to fit with the culture. And the process of change, therefore, cannot, if you want it to work, it cannot be the same for every organization, because organizational culture is different whether you've got 1 man, 2 men, 500 men. You've each got your own unique culture. And I discovered that this was a major barrier to change, in that people use the model and they use the same model for every culture in the same way. So we have to understand the culture. What do we mean by culture? We're talking here about what Edgar Schein called, and these are a bit technical, some of these definitions, a pattern of shared basic assumptions. So assumptions of the group, and they've been learned by members of the group. This is a bit more clear, I thought. where we talk about defining appropriate attitudes and behaviors. Culture is about what's important to the organization, what are our values, and what are the attitudes and behaviors which support or move those values forward. But I thought that's a bit bloody technical. I didn't understand this. Too tough for me. So I thought that's more like it. I thought culture's about the way things are around here, how we work as an organization, how we do things, what's acceptable to us. So the way things are around here. And I saw culture as the glue that holds the organization together. So the individual's beliefs become the groups, and the team's beliefs, which becomes the organizational culture and eventually the environment. But I'm only interested in the first bit. So it becomes the glue that holds the business together, but it can also be the glue that prevents the business changing and prevents it adapting. So culture is a fundamental, whoops, what happened then? There we are. Culture is a fundamental element of any change process, and it has to be part of the process, not something on the side. So culture became one of the key things, or the key thing, to enable successful change. So let me talk about what we did there. So any change initiative has to recognize and understand the culture of the organization and start from there. You start by understanding, recognizing the culture, and you start from there. You don't start from anywhere else. And I think, although this sounds obvious, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. People don't even consider culture. They take it for granted. It has to start with the culture. Change has to fit with the culture. And therefore, the process of change is not the same for every organization. It's not XYZ for every organization. It's XYP, ABC, or PQR for different organizations. So we need to understand the culture of the organization. So with this in mind, I dived into my research again. And I've done this with many organizations since. And I developed a quick culture questionnaire. So to understand the culture, so here it is in black and white, very simple, 24 questions. And I can send you a copy of this if you want it, no problem. It's copyrighted by me, so you can use it. You're free to use it. There's 24 questions, and they base around, simple statement. You either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And then I give this to as many people as I can in the organization. So I'm looking for cross-section of views, of feedback. And the outcome of that will give me a feel to what the organization culture is at that moment in time. So that's how the questionnaire works, fairly straightforward. And the outcome will be, just spend 2 minutes reading this. So there's 4 cultures that I tend to work with. So if you read the top one for a second, have a read. So the first one is a supportive, open culture, lots of trust, up for it, want to do things, nod your head, and they all jump and do stuff. A lovely, easy change organization. So if you read the second one, it's on neutral. Sorry to give you lots of reading. Okay, So the neutral culture is not as open and supportive as the open culture, but they're generally up for it. They just need to be nudged along, helped, supported, rewarded, etc. So it's a slightly lower response to change than the supportive open one. And then the third and fourth, let's have a look at these a second. Okay, so have a read of apathetic. So it's a bit, it tends to be businesses that have been around a long time and have always done it this way type of thing. It doesn't have to be, it can be a fairly new company who just gets stuck in a rut. So they're apathetic, we're all right, the market's fine, we can tick along, blah, blah, blah. It's that sort of culture. And the bottom one, if you just read that a second. So the bottom one is slightly more hostile culture. And so you could, without being sort of, I'm not being political, but if you think of Leyland in the 60s and 70s, there was a pretty hostile culture there. They didn't want change and they fought against it. They disappeared as well, but that's another story. So you've got the four sorts of cultures, but the key to this, I want you to think about, is if you're introducing change, you're trying to move things forward in a supportive open culture, then you can't use the same approach as in a hostile culture. It's pretty obvious. The trouble is with obvious things is the obvious isn't obvious till it's obvious, if that makes sense to you. So people actually don't even think about this. So what I'm saying is you have to take into account the culture of the organization, and you have to work with the culture of the organization. So there needs to be a different approach when we're working with, say, a supportive open culture than with a hostile culture. But isn't that obvious? But as I said earlier, the obvious isn't obvious till it's obvious. And people actually don't do this. So here's a real example. This is a company I'm currently working with. I wouldn't name the company because that wouldn't be fair. So they employed about 40 people. They want to introduce change. They want to do things. The MD wants to change things. So I did a culture questionnaire exercise with them, with 9 members of the senior management team, and 7 senior managers, and the MD and the joint owner. I did a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and a culture analysis. And this is how it came out. So you can see the graph. So if you look at my pointer, that score was about 75, just under moving into the neutral culture. This one was on just in neutral, on the edge, apathetic, and so on. So really, I did an analysis of this, matched it with my SWOT, and I sort of thought that's where they were. They were in the neutral, the bottom end of the neutral zone, if that's the right words. And what I decided, in order to help to move the culture forward, is to give the feedback in a slightly different way. So I printed off big A5 or A4 or A3, whatever, and flip charts, put them all around the table, went in. This was my plan. Go in, get the team there, get them to walk around, read things, and then get them together and talk about how we can move forward. This was almost the first step in trying to change the culture, to move it forward. Unfortunately, this virus came along, which meant I couldn't do that. So I ended up doing it online, which wasn't as successful, but it got the point over. Some of the things I came up with in order to move the business forward is that they need to have senior management meetings, obviously, at board level, I said, at a fairly high level, and every 2 months. But they need clear, concise business objectives. They need a strategy that works. They need a strategy that will help them to move forward with KPIs and so on. Clear vision, mission, and values. And the management team need to be involved in developing this, not one person. They need some meetings set up with clear, concise accountability. So I'm creating accountability because in a neutral culture, people tend to pass things on. They need to get some leadership training, possibly, for the management team, and maybe some one-to-one coaching. But these were only suggestions that I was going to talk to them about, and I haven't had a chance to do that yet. But what I'm trying to say is you have to work with the culture. You have to work with it, not against it. So moving forward, we decided, hang on a sec, I'm just looking at my slides here. Yeah. Moving forward, what are the sort of lessons out of this that I learned, not just from this exercise, but from my research over the years and through my own attempts at business change and business development. The first thing is you have to embrace the culture. And we're not talking about setting up programs to do culture change. I'm talking about doing change with the culture, which over time will enable culture change by doing the change, if that makes sense to you. So embrace the culture, put actions in place which will move the business forward whilst taking the workforce with you. Obviously, that depends on the culture. So if it's a very open culture, then that'll be easy to do. If it's a hostile culture, then the actions you put in place when you're embracing the culture will be completely different. You have to fit the solution to the problem, not use a solution, the same solution for every problem, which is obvious again. That's a waterfall. I just want you to, that's my second question. The first one was the mountain. See if you can guess where that waterfall is. Bonus points for that. Okay, so some final thoughts on, based on my experience, my failures, my successes, and my research and so on. The first thing is there are no quick fixes. Allow time for your organization to understand things. Allow people to take things on board, take them in, adapt and reflect. It's one of the things I struggled with over my sort of career is reflective. I just wanted to do it, but I learned that sometimes you have to stop, think, step back, and actually it moves quicker. It moves quicker when you actually stop. It sounds crazy, but actually it's true. Continuous improvement's about everyone, not them. It's about everyone getting involved and understanding. It's not about let's do continuous improvement on people. It's about doing continuous improvement together. Significant change takes time and needs leadership, and it needs priorities, and it needs you to support people. Some people will struggle, but you need to help them. Some people will pick it up easily, but it takes strong leadership, clarity of where you're going, involving people and ensuring that things are moving forward. And when they're not, finding out why. Working with the culture, working with the people. And if you want to achieve culture change, which you may need to, depending on the organization, you do it through embracing the culture and introducing the change. And over a long period, culture will change because they see the benefits that are coming out of the actions you were taking. Not, let's do a culture change exercise. That's nonsense, to be honest. I'm sorry to say that, but just doing culture change is strange. Introducing change and embracing the culture and moving it forward is the way you do it. It's a long-term endeavor, needs commitment, investment, and persistence. And people say, well, if it's a long-term endeavor, you know, we haven't got time for that. And my answer is, if it's a long-term endeavor, you better start now. You need to start right now. So long-term doesn't mean you put it off. Long-term means you get on with it. So another final thought, you know, if you think about, we are all great at fixing the wrong problem. So, you know, if you go to the doctors, you want him to look at you or her to look at you, understand what's wrong with you, and then determine the cure. Similarly with change, find out first. Diagnosis is first. Find out what the culture is, what the general approach is, where we are, and then you start planning the process using the culture of the people, the culture of the organization, and anything else which can help and support you. So, thank you very much for listening. I know we're going to have questions. I'm also going to send you a copy of this if you want it, and feel free to use it. And if you need any help or want to chat about it, give me a shout. But I want you also is to work out what was the mountain and what was the waterfall. So thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Alan. Just checking on
41
our
minutes.
side. Don't know if anyone knows the mountains or the waterfalls there. We'll find out in a moment. I've got a question come up on the chat facility. How important, in your opinion, is it to craft and develop a compelling case or script that suits all involved?
Very important, but make sure the script is relevant. I keep repeating myself, by the way. I'm sorry about this, but it is, people don't get it sometimes. The script is relevant to the culture of the organization. So if you create a compelling, wonderful script and you've got a hostile culture, they just say, what's the point in that? So you have to adjust it, if you see what I mean, if that makes sense to you. So if you've got a company that's up for it, you create a compelling, up for it script. If you've got a company that needs a bit of nudging, create a compelling script, but include the nudging bit. If that makes sense. I think it does.
Cool. Does anyone want to come off their microphones and ask a question or have any comments they want to share? Very quiet this morning.
I've got a question. It's Andrew from a company called Minerva and Ultrawave in Cardiff.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi. How do you get senior management to change then?
It's first of all, what is the culture of the organization in terms of the senior managers? Because it's a good question, but it's difficult to answer because there's no answer. It's not about getting senior managers to change. It's about getting each senior manager to change. Are they all different? So you have to embrace them as individuals, but also if you've got quite a positive culture, you can actually start doing things and the ones who are not changing will jump on board. If you've got a hostile culture, you've got to take a different approach. You almost got to, in inverted commas, beat up each individual. So it's organizational, it fits the organization. So getting them to change depends on who they are and what sort of person they are. I'm not sure if that's a good answer or not, but it's an honest one. Do you want to follow up on that, Andrew? Do you want to?
No, that's great. I mean, it's probably a bit of psychology as well, understanding the individual, find out what their triggers are.
They are you have to treat them as people, as individuals. So when you say, how do you get senior managers to change? It's better to say, how do I get Tom, Bill, Joe, and Richard to change? Ah, right. That's a different thing. Individuals.
Hello, Alan. John Newman here.
Hi, John.
Hi there. Yeah, I really enjoyed your talk. I think the one thing that you actually mentioned on there is we've gone through a period of rapid growth, which brought all sorts of problems and systems falling apart. And the biggest mistake we made was to find quick fixes. This is not working. Let's get a bit of software in for that. And it's been an absolute nightmare. And I must be one of the few people who's actually enjoying this virus break at the moment, because it's given us a chance to start analysing our business, looking at everything and seeing what needs to be done collectively, if you like, embracing all the problems we've got, you know. So I absolutely agree that the biggest mistake that we ever made was to introduce quick little procedures as quick fixes, and it's caused more chaos, actually.
Yeah, even though for a short term it might work, and then all of a sudden, so there's this thing about you have to get people to embrace change, and you do change with the people, not on the people. And that's what I've learned that through experience as well. So it's better sometimes not to learn it through experience, but it's life, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Questions come up on the chat. What's your view regarding the importance of inviting participation in developing the change solution?
100%. I don't know if that answers the question. Participation is critical. It's almost as if, it's a great question again, but it's almost as if I'm sensing, and I could be completely wrong, that the organisation, the guy who's asked that question, the organisation consists of managers and people. But it doesn't. The organisation consists of people. Everyone, embrace it. Yes, you've got to get them all involved. And you'll be amazed what some people who you think are quite low-level people in the organisation, what they actually come up with, and how they get on board with the change because they are included. Does that answer your question?
Wait for an answer there. Yes, was the answer to that right there. Anyone else want to come off and ask Alan any questions at all?
Alan, Tanya P, I've got a question. How important is it, what's in it for me, that factor?
Very important. And I think you know that, that's why you asked the question, so it's a good question. Yeah, what's in it for me is always important, because if you can't get that concept of people seeing something for them, they're reluctant to move forward. It's like when you folded your arms, if you did the fold your arms thing, but what's in it for you to fold them the other way and keep them the other way? Nothing. So next time I ask you to fold your arms, you do it the same way. The what's in it for me is very, very important. And again, match it with the culture. So if everyone is up for it, the what's in it for me is much easier to embrace than if you've got a hostile culture.
Yeah, I think the point you made there, Alan, about, oh, hi, it's Dan here, by the way. I think the point you made there about involving people, basically, you know, remind them for a moment what the current culture is. Is that a culture that they want to belong to? And what's in it for them is actual change that's going to benefit everyone. I think you need to. I think you're absolutely right. I think you need to remind them not just about where you're headed and how pretty the place will look like then, but where are we right now, and is that a place you want to belong to? Because I would imagine whether it be senior management or apprentice, if change is needed with them as individuals, it could well be because they're just reacting to the environment they found themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think if you develop a strategy or a process of change that allows some empathy for that, and I think it'll become clear quite quickly, actually, is it the environment or is it the individual? Mm. You know, so I think what's in it for them is a reminder that the current culture that they exist in probably isn't a culture they really want to belong in, like, you know.
The other thing, and that's a great, thank you for that, that's really useful. The other thing I have found, which is very, very important, is clarity. Somebody ringing me or something. Is having that, having a clear vision and a clear approach to where you want to be. If you're very, very clear, then people can lock into that. If you're fuzzy, and people do start going through, you know, I want to go there, but I'm not sure where it's going, then how the hell are the people going to buy into that? So if you've got a clear vision that you've got the people bought into, then you've got much more chance of success. That's my phone, sorry. Does that sort of answer your question? Is it Daniel, was it?
It was Andrew Beer asking the question.
Sorry, Andrew.
I just wanted to sort of emphasise the observation really that like my dad John, we're a family business. We are both directors of a small business, and you put quick fixes in thinking it's going to solve the problem, when actually you're not addressing the culture. You're addressing processes first.
Exactly.
And one of the other gentlemen there said about senior management needing to change. I know he sort of rounded that off by having an empathy and understanding for recognising them as individuals. But let's not make assumptions for a moment that everyone has the right skill set and experiences to make lasting change that will benefit everyone. This is where collaboration is important, yet from a leadership perspective, though, clarity does need to come from there as to where the business is going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, I'll stop now.
But bear in mind that the clarity can come through talking with the people as well, getting them involved, even in strategic development. And I don't think many organisations do that. Oh, strategy, that's the MD's job or the senior managers will sort it out. Talk to the people as well. They got ideas, they know the business.
Of course.
And also, I don't know if you picked up on the point I made about strategy, that I've worked with companies and I talk to them about strategy. Yes, that document in the cupboard over there that we haven't looked at for 10 years. It's not. Strategy has to be a living document. And I tend to produce 3 years is long enough. Look forward 3 years, and every year you update it, so you're always looking forward 3 years, but you build in actions.
Yeah.
Actions. Okay, sorry. Any more questions?
Oh, I've got another one come up. Middle management, supervisors, critical in supporting change daily with their team members.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agree.
I think. Don't think anyone else. Don't think you're going to get your answers to your waterfall and your mountains.
No, I was going to ask that again now. Did anyone know? Well, the mountain was the Matterhorn, and the waterfall, believe it or not, is up in Astridvester in Brecon.
Oh, wow.
We've gone from the Alps, Swiss-Italian Alps to Brecon. Good old Wales.
There we go. Fabulous. Thank you, Alan, for presenting this morning, and thank you everybody for coming along. Enjoy your long weekend as much as you can in the circumstances and the VE Day celebrations. Hope you all have a good one.
Yeah, and thank you all for your questions, and good luck for the future to everyone. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.